other representatives of the city I would like to introduce. Councilwoman Hickson Shepherd, City Attorney Peter Bontrager, and City Attorney Neil Bontrager, Deputy City Manager Renee Tyler, and City Planner Joel Pugh. I would like to welcome you all to tonight's monthly meeting of the Commission and take this opportunity to explain how we operate. As indicated in our agenda, we will begin with the regular session of the meeting. We will approve the minutes of the January 27th meeting. We will have a public comment period and move into executive session for a presentation by the Lakota Group on the Journey to Destination Webster Groves Comprehensive Plan. Anyone with an interest in speaking during the public comment portion of the meeting may indicate to city staff they have a question or would like to express their opinion, or make sure that we can accurately record your name. We ask that you fill out a speaker's card if you are in person and turn it in to Mr. Pugh or Ms. Tyler. For those on Zoom, please click on the raise hand feature on Zoom. To make sure that we accurately record your name, we ask that you identify your full name and address at the beginning of your comments, either in person or on Zoom. When you make your comments, we ask that you be as concise as possible and not repeat a point made by a previous speaker. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. One person who is a spokesperson for an organization may have 6 minutes to comment. Comments concerning items not on the agenda should be made during the public comment section of the agenda near the beginning of the meeting. We have completed the regular portion of the agenda. When we have completed the regular portion of the agenda, we will go into executive session. At that time, the commission will hear the presentation. You are welcome to remain and listen to the discussion, but there will be no additional opportunity for public comment. If you want information regarding the presentation, you may contact city staff at City Hall. I would ask the secretary to read the first item on.
I'm sorry, can I? Because I didn't hear a word of that. Could you share the Zoom screen instead of the PowerPoint so I can see it? And then if you do share on the Zoom, yeah, go down to where it says share, the bottom over to your left on the bottom row, the green with the arrow in it, say share. Then pick the presentation you want to share. I'll hit on the bottom of that screen, share. Okay. And now I get the captions. You can just.
I put all the caps.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I call for the
Thank
approval of the minutes from January 27th, 2025.
Someone like to make a motion?
Should I do,
Well, got to make a motion first.
Motion to approve minutes from January. Oh. 1 second. What's that? Meeting minutes.
Okay. Any changes? Do I hear a second? A second?
Second. Okay.
Okay. Motion to approve? Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I'll call the public comment portion of the meeting.
We have Dave Buck. Mr. Buck. It's been a while, Dave.
I turned this on.
thank you. Dave Buck, Colonial Village Apartments. I'm just a resident. I've lived in Webster Groves for 25 years, and I am long overdue in sharing these comments with you. I don't know what the statistics are. I haven't researched it myself, but I have to believe in the time that I have lived in Webster that 90% of this commission's recommendations that go up to city council get approved. That number may even be 95%. And because of that, you know, I sit in on a number of commission meetings out of interest, but I think of the 17 boards and commissions in the city, I think this is the most important and the most invaluable because of the work you do. I will use the KVC, Missouri Children's Hospital thing as an example. You guys sat through 3 public hearings. The first 2 were really contentious. Emotions were high, remember? And this happens a lot with you guys when there's controversies and there's contentions. And then the third public hearing was very well run. Although there were equal opposition sides, it was a terrific public hearing. You all voted and the thing went up to city council, and city council will, I think, tomorrow actually vote on it. My point is, to me, you all do the heavy lifting. You all plow the road. You all get in the weeds and you deal with these really tough issues. And quite honestly, I think you make it really easy for city council. They don't near deal with the emotion and the controversy that you guys do. And the KDC proposal is an example. So I just want to tell you that, you know, I don't think you guys probably get the kudos that you deserve. I mean, I think you guys do a terrific job. It's a really tough job. I'm glad I'm not doing it, but you know, I have a lot of friends on the council, on your commission, and I just think you do a terrific job. And I just wanted to come here tonight and tell you all so. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, the next item, there is no public hearing. There are no plats, site plans. I will call for the adjournment of the regular session. Was there anybody online? There wasn't.
There was not, no, I was just checking.
Okay, motion to adjourn regular session.
Oh, Maddie. Yeah, so Maddie is on. She just raised her hand.
Maddie's a commission member.
Mhm.
Yeah, please. Okay.
Maddie, you can speak. You're not muted. Oh,
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was just going to ask to be promoted to a panelist. So you can put me in as having approved the minutes.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn the regular session. All in favor?
Aye.
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 It was taken.
Okay.
The lag.
I'll call to open the executive session. Tonight we have other business, the comprehensive plan presentation.
Okay, so okay, she's not.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the Lakota Group. We have Josh Bloom and Hannah Badger, and they will be presenting our most updated comprehensive plan tonight. If you guys could please join us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. It feels special. I feel honored to follow Dave Buck with that welcome for you guys. I think it's a perfect step into the comprehensive plan because this is something that, although is going to be adopted by City Council, it is something that's going to be a tool for you guys to help kind of guide growth and development as we grow into the future. So this is a very important initiative that the city is doing, and we're excited to be here tonight to share with you guys kind of where we are in the process. I want to start with saying thank you again for reviewing those goals and strategies memo. I know it was extremely lengthy. I think it was almost a 40 or 50-page document. So there's a lot of information that we're going to cover tonight, but we're going to try to keep it high level, and we want to leave a chance for you guys to give your comments and your feedback. So we'll have some guiding questions to kind of start getting you guys thinking about those goals. You want to go to the next slide? So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through some of the high-level goals and strategies for the comprehensive plan. And really right now, this is a draft, and the intent is for you guys to challenge, workshop, and ask questions about those ideas. And then we will also be reviewing some opportunity site graphics. These were developed after our last community workshop where we got some input from local residents about what they'd like to see on some key sites in the community. And then we've since then developed graphics for your input. So if you want to go to the next slide, just quickly highlighting where we are in the process. As you guys remember, this is a 3-phased planning process for the comprehensive plan. The first phase was really about engage and assess. And this was where we came to the community. We spoke with numerous individuals to build a foundation of knowledge of who Webster Groves is today. And that really ended with the State of the City report. And from that, we kind of used some of the ideas we heard from the community and some of the facts that we knew from our assessment to start coming up with these ideas to kind of test different things from transportation to housing and kind of see how we can move into the future. And that's really this document that you guys have with you today. This is kind of the range of ideas, and we've brought in the community's input into that. So this is the draft, and once we get your input, we'll be developing the actual plan and moving into implementation. Go to the next slide. So we really just wanted to highlight again that this is a community-led vision. This plan has definitely had numerous opportunities for the community to be involved. We've hosted 2 open houses. We've had pop-up events throughout the summer. When we first came in here, we hosted 10 listening sessions. You guys were one of those sessions with us. We've learned Webster's very involved. We've had 2 online surveys and over 500 responses with those, so that's pretty incredible. And we also have the project website, which is just the hub of all of this information.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that, for a city this size, is that a good sample size?
That's typically what we look for in sample size. It's for your population, that's 200, 230 is about what we aim for. So you guys had 270 per survey that we were doing. And I think Josh can speak to sample size. That is definitely more than we've gotten for most communities we work with as well. Top percentile. Very engaged. So this, I just wanted to highlight this in the survey that we recently did. We kind of, and in the document you looked at, we came up with a community vision statement for the plan. And this has just highlighted a lot of the words that resonated with the community and came to the top as what people want to see Webster Groves be in 2040. And I think this is also very reflective of who they think they are today. So welcoming, vibrant, walkable, and sustainable and inclusive were some of the things that rose to the top. Did you have a question?
Well, I just had a comment. It's like you had affordable on there, and that was kind of in the small range.
Yes.
And we hear that a lot. You know, people wanting affordable housing, right?
Mhm.
And so I was just looking at that and going, okay, well, now we know.
Yes. It definitely, like it was one of the top responses in this, although it wasn't as high up as safe or inclusive, it was still one of the top words that was seen. And when we get into the goals and strategies, you'll kind of see how we've woven that into it as well. So quickly, I just wanted to highlight the planning framework. So in that document you guys read, this is really kind of the roadmap for achieving Gretna 2040. This included a vision statement and then had 7 community pillars, which are the key topic areas. And each one of those is broken out to goals, strategies, and potential action statements. So this is kind of really the roadmap of how we achieve some of these goals. So it has measurable strategies and the tasks that people will take with the action items to achieve the goal. You want to go to the next? So just to highlight those 7 community pillars here, Josh is going to start with the first goal, but these community pillars arose from our initial conversations with the community. These seems to be the common themes that resonated most with local residents, local business owners, and the key stakeholders that we spoke with, and really tried to paint a picture and a comprehensive picture of Gretna. So we're going to walk through each goal. Sorry, Webster. Thank you. So we're going to walk through each goal right now. Josh is going to kick us off, and we're just going to kind of give a high-level overview of the goals and strategies, but we really want this to be a chance for you to give your feedback on each one. So Josh, if you want to start.
Hi, nice to see you again. You're clicking. Yes, next slide. So as you saw in the memo, although most memos are not 45 pages, there was a lot in there, and we are not going to go through all of this, as Hannah said. We're going to look at the 7 pillars of the goals and strategies. Under each of the strategies in the memo, there are potential actions, and in some cases there may be a half dozen or more potential actions. We're not going to go through those here, but you are welcome to bring them up if there's something you want to discuss. And to sort of give us a little time parameter so that we have, so that we can cover all of this, we'd like to spend about 5 minutes on each of the 7 pillars. And that hopefully will leave us a little time for further discussion after. And we'll start with resilient neighborhoods, which, and these pillars are not in order of priority. They are just 7 pillars in the order that they're in. But resilient neighborhoods and housing was something that was central to the conversations that we had. The goals that you see here reflect the importance, as Commissioner Hunt brought up, some of the things that rose to the top were the importance of diversifying housing options and how to do that. You'll see that supporting that goal is a next step that of conducting a housing study and updating the zoning to match those needs, right? Second goal talks about attainable housing and how that really entered many of our conversations and surveys, and how to preserve the attainable housing that exists in Webster Groves, particularly in North Webster and South Webster, and how to create other opportunities for infill development that can support housing that is accessible to different kinds of families who want to be here. And the third goal here talks about the distinctive character of Webster, something that came up over and over again, and the importance of preserving the scale and the pattern of development in Webster, and some of the strategies that can support that goal. We thought we would sort of at least offer 3 leading questions for each of these pillars. One is there anything here that that should not be here? Is there anything, in other words, and is there anything missing? And is there anything that's not clear? Thank you. Yeah, the hearts on the right reflect the scoring from the last community meeting where we presented a draft. These are still in draft, but we presented these goals and strategies in draft form at the last community workshop, and people could vote with stickers on display boards, and that's what that reflects. And also the online survey version of that had additional input in the same way. Yeah.
So I was going to say, goal 3.
Yes.
In general, the goals are created by you, or they're the input of the people who participated.
Yeah, this was our synthesis of the input that we got. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just,
Little authoritarian.
oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, so you described distinctive character, and then you're talking about doing, or like design guidelines or,
Yes.
I guess in preserving the distinctive character, are we going to allow for new, new design, or how do you?
Yes, and
communicate that?
I think Hannah is going to talk about this in one of the other pillars. The concept of form-based codes to preserve the scale, but allow more diversity of design while still maintaining the character of the city.
How does the city do that and try and keep some of the properties not so expensive? That's what attainable is. I mean, can you afford it? You cannot afford it. So how do you decide?
It's tricky, right? But one of the principles that's expressed here is the idea of retaining the I'm going to overuse the word attainable housing that already exists. So naturally occurring housing that's here now. Because many of those homes are smaller homes and are therefore less expensive than other parts of Webster. And so part of this plan, again, this is in draft form, but what we're talking about is how do you create the kinds of policies that retain those neighborhoods so that they remain relatively accessible compared to other neighborhoods. if those neighborhoods develop more intensively, with larger houses on small lots, those houses then become more expensive. Those neighborhoods become less attainable. These are sort of the these are the balances that commissions like yours make. Well,
let's-
it
Further down in your,
Yeah.
I know maybe when you go through the districts that your proposed districts, I saw
Yeah.
that kind of matrix. So in each district, it's square footages and, maximum square footage and things like that. Is that how?
Right,
Is
it's
that how you
applying-
would define the attainable, how you keep smaller houses are more attainable? Is that the rationale?
they are generally.
Yes, that's what I'm
Yes.
saying. So.
Yeah.
So district wise, you know.
It's having appropriate zoning and in appropriate neighborhoods is really just what it is. Yeah. Okay.
If I can just,
Yes.
it's just something, with regard to goal 2, strategy 2, something specific, if I could just put in there, perhaps city keep in mind that I'm a DIY guy. And when I moved to Webster, if I could get it to the curb, they would take it into trash. So I think when negotiating trash disposal contracts, you say, support homeowners with home repairs, that, debt-ready disposal of whatever I can get to the curb was a big thing, because now they're a little pickier, and then I gotta pay to dispose, and then I had to pay recently $200 to dispose a piece of pipe. So that's just something specific, if I can, that just bothered me,
Okay.
so I want to take a chance.
Thank you.
This is Maddie. Heikola, I had a question regarding what considerations were brought in to this to these goals regarding the vote to overturn duplexes back a couple of years ago. Was that considered when making these goals, or was it based on the community input from the folks that you met with?
Yeah. And is there a
If someone was talking, I'm sorry, I can't hear the question.
I gotta read it.
Sorry, Maddie, it was a little unclear. If you could repeat that again and I guess try your best.
Is it unclear because it's hard to hear me, or because what I said didn't make sense?
It's hard to hear.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll switch headphones and I'll ask later. Thanks.
I think what she was asking is we had a discussion about duplexes in the city and locations and things like that. And I think you've addressed that in the diversified housing.
Yeah.
You've included that kind of discussion that we would have further in the housing options. Downsizing residents, seniors wishing to remain, and doing basically a housing study. So.
Right.
Yeah. We voted on it here in our body. Yeah. Yeah, it did. Right. That particular issue. Okay, well, it's on a case by case basis though, that was a particular, we were talking about a particular development, weren't we? No, it was just,
So if I may.
Yeah.
There was a proposed plan that was recommended by the planning commission to council. Council approved it in ordinance, which modified the A4 zoning areas. That was enacted into law as an ordinance, and some citizens, on their own volition and under the referendum policies that we have in our charter, sought to put it in front of the people. So what was voted down was that ordinance. It does not mean that you could not go forward with a change, with whatever modifications you want to make, whatever you want to do in the future. That still go the same way. They have to come through you as a planning commission and back to council. but they can enact a new, different, modified, amended ordinance that might include more, might include less than what had happened before. So I think Maddie's question was, is there something about that vote that would preempt or prohibit action that's on, and it does not?
No.
In my opinion. That's all.
Thank you.
Maddie, did I
No.
address your question?
I think she was changing headphones. She's on pause, I think. I think she's paused.
I'm looking for headphones and it's hard to hear what you said, but I think that you captured my question.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Next slide, please. Okay, the second pillar is economic vitality, and a few things here. The traditional business districts in Webster are really just a prize of the cities. They are unique. They're each unique, and the first goal here reflects the importance of maintaining those business districts and their vibrancy. They're unusual. It is unusual to have such vibrant historic commercial districts as you do. And one of the ways of doing that is to consider a commercial district management program or entity of some kind that can manage those three districts, to diversify the uses in those districts and consider how they can develop with more mixed use development that is still compatible with the districts. This is where form-based code can come in. And there are a couple of sites that we will be looking at that reflect that, those opportunities. And these are also opportunities to create mixed-use development that creates different kinds of housing products that could be, that could serve some of the needs that aren't being met elsewhere in the city, such as for downsizing families or couples. And the third goal here talks about the importance of strengthening Webster's economy and tax base, and the strategies and the potential actions address ways to create additional commercial development on corridors where it's appropriate, and also to develop additional light industrial uses in places where that already exists and where that could add to the tax base. Any thoughts or questions on these? Okay. The first one was the hardest. Yes.
I do have a quick question on the industrial sector. Is there something about the tax revenue generated by industrial that's more advantageous than commercial and retail uses?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the retail uses would probably have a more direct.
So when you think of light industrial, thinking like small service businesses that need small warehouse space, or like what is
And
growing
the existing industrial park that could have that has developable parcels on it.
I guess my question is the highest and best use industrial, or is it more commercial and retail, like a full redevelopment of use, or does the?
I think it depends on the location.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't. Yeah.
That's what.
For that, diversity of businesses. Also, city alive.
Yes, I mean, yes, a diversity of businesses in the city, and I think different tools for different places, right? So you have these commercial districts that are inherently retail oriented, and that's what makes them vibrant. Industrial uses are inherently not vibrant in that way, like they don't have people coming in and out all the time, and so but they are also part of Webster's economy, part of Webster's land uses, and there's a place for both in different portions of the city.
I do have a quick question
Yeah.
now that I think about it. The commercial district management program.
Yes.
Does that have to do with combining the districts and have one, or do they each remain separate? would they each remain separate districts? Like right now, they're separate taxing districts, right?
Yeah.
And so, when you talk about what is a management what?
So for many commercial districts, historic commercial districts, they benefit from having some kind of management, some kind of downtown management, somebody who is sort of looking out for the entity as a whole, right? And in this case, you have three main ones. And it's not to say that they would be combined. They each have their own personality and their own kind of function. But a commercial district management entity, or, in sort of my lingo, it would be a Main Street program of some kind, would help small businesses with accessing, accessing incentives, or organize events in each of the districts, market them, create wayfinding signage, identity, things like that.
Oh, okay. So they would manage one entity would manage all three, those kind of things.
That's what we're envisioning. That the three districts are small and that they could be managed by one entity, but they would maintain their individual character. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
All right, next slide. A fun one. City of the Arts, something that was referred to quite frequently in all of the engagement work that we did. And we think of arts very broadly, and we really talk about it here as kind of fostering a creative economy in Webster. That creative businesses can range from, art galleries to architects' offices. These can all be part of a creative economy. And so the first goal talks about that. Second goal talks about creativity in public spaces. There already is a lot of public art in Webster. How do you use those public spaces to reinforce that identity of City of the Arts and create ways for people to see that kind of creativity in different forms throughout, not just in sculpture, but in other ways of reinforcing the arts in public places. The third goal is historic preservation combined with high quality new architecture, so that you are preserving the excellent architecture that exists in the city, both residential and commercial, and that you are also allowing for new architecture that reflects the same kind of quality as the existing architecture. And the fourth is to build on Webster's reputation for creative public events. There are already several, but enhancing these events, creating additional events can reinforce that identity as City of the Arts. Any thoughts here? Yes?
On that one, standard goal 3 strategy 2, I know the city, I've seen in the Webster Kirkwood Times, they do the awards once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Best rehab, best addition. I would think perhaps in that goal, there's an opportunity to capitalize upon.
That's a great example. And I actually think it's not one of the potential actions that we listed in the memo, and we could certainly add that. All right, thank you. Yes, sorry.
No, that's all right. I just feel like in a way, goal 3 and goal 3 of resilient neighborhoods at City of the Arts are basically in conflict, right? You have one that's talking about pattern books and design standards, discouraging tear downs. And then you have one that talks about creating a new standard of excellence and new quality architecture. And so are we dictating what that is, or is it vibrant and diverse?
Are you,
I feel like they're very in conflict.
pardon? I feel
like they're very in conflict with each other as strategic goals. So how do you balance those?
How do you balance creating new Say it one more time and I'm sorry.
Sorry, the quality new architecture.
Yes.
Diversity versus pattern books and design guidelines
And the
of goal
distinctive
3,
character.
distinctive character. Thank you.
Yeah.
Going back to the other, I feel like
I
so.
see. Yeah.
Pillars and
I-
conflict is the way to frame it.
Yeah, okay, we can look at the wording of it. But the idea is, again, I think the idea is that all architecture should reflect the quality of what exists, but that there should also be room for new design. And that pattern books can help people with historic homes repair and maintain them in the style that they were built. It does not need to be a pattern book for new architecture. Rather, that's where a form-based code would be more applicable. Okay. Yes, and to your other, I think embedded in your point is that there is a lot of crossover between these pillars or among these pillars. And that is intentional, that the pillars should reinforce each other. And one of the things that we'll do in the plan itself is point out areas where a goal or strategy in one pillar supports a goal or strategy in another pillar. All right. I'm going to turn it back to Hannah to talk about the next pillar, quality of life.
All right, you guys are stuck with me for a little, so bear with me. So pillar 4 is quality of life, and this is really focusing on the parks and recreation and our open spaces. From our assessment of Webster Groves, as well as what we've heard from the community, you guys have an extremely strong recreation and open space system. And so these goals are really ensuring that everyone has access to those, really kind of enforcing this walkable environment. And also working on how we can design those spaces to foster social interaction. So looking at how we can, expand and diversify some of the programming that's happening to make them more inclusive, how we can host more events to make these parks and open space more of our central gathering places. And that last goal is really looking at how we can continue to preserve green space in those natural areas, both from our floodplains with stormwater management, but also kind of using different tools to educate and engage people with those open spaces. I know the Parks Department does a great job at bringing in native planting and wildlife habitats within their parks. So it's kind of celebrating those, using education as a tool to kind of engage the community with those elements. Does anyone have any comments or questions about these ones?
I didn't mention specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I didn't see it mentioned specifically, and it really doesn't fit in Goal 1, Strategy 1, but you said, I thought you said, talk about the recreation. So there's the facilities, there's the rec center, the gym, the swimming pool, the gym. And I think, well, they're just redoing the swimming pool.
The swimming pool, yeah.
Redoing the swimming pool. So I think keeping those facilities, the ice rink, the gym and the swimming pool and the classes they have up there, capitalizing upon that. It's not necessarily walking distance to everybody.
Yes.
So I guess you're supposed to run to the gym. So I was a little, that seems like a fair size oversight to me. That's a great facility. And I know when my kids were little, we used the pool, I used the gym.
Yeah. That specific park is a community park, so it can be within driving distance in a community. And I think how we are trying to tackle it here is more with Goal 2 within the strategies of programming. So we can kind of look back at the language and make sure it celebrates what already exists, and ensure that we're continuing to,
spaces.
yeah, that we're continuing to diversify those offerings.
But that rec center is a hell of a thing. But that's good to have.
Yeah, it's a great asset in the community. Any other thoughts or questions? Anything missing?
This is Maddie. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, part of the walkability ask that I hear a lot about in South Webster is about lighting and sidewalks too. So just wanted to ask about that along with the parks and green spaces.
Yes, I think we can definitely look at how we can incorporate it into this. I think it probably fits in goal 2 and just how we design those spaces and making them inclusive and safe. But when we get to the later pillar, I don't know if it's the next or the following one, we talk a lot about walkability and mobility. And I do think there we talked about some streetscape improvements that can make a place more walkable. So when we get to that section, we can address that, but I think that would be a great thing for us to incorporate in goal 2 here as well.
I don't know if this would be part of this, but Kirkwood has that beautiful like Walker Lake, like a pond. And is that something we could put in here as like a water feature space, like a pond?
I
Like
think in some of the action items, we definitely addressed that as being a component of something that can be incorporated.
Okay,
But I can make sure that's in there. Yeah.
thanks. And the recreational programming, like when we first moved to Webster Groves, there was not many options for like little kids and stuff
Mhm.
like that. The programming for Webster Groves could definitely use some work.
Children's
Yeah,
programs.
children's and family and
Second.
classes.
That's great feedback.
And was there any discussion about how do we attain new areas? I mean, we've got
Mhm.
parks and things like that. Was there any
Yes.
discussion of how to attain new areas? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
So I think
donations or
yeah, two of the ways
Good
we
question.
approach that were in goal 1, we really looked at if there is new development requiring a park be a part of that. So ensuring if there's any new, and we recognize Webster's pretty built out. So that's kind of a challenge. The other component of that is partnerships. So where we can partner with other local organizations, schools, who also have some open space on their properties and kind of encourage them to make them public spaces for the community. So I think those are the 2 main ones. And the other component, which actually falls later in these, is looking at our floodplains and how we can make those more passive green spaces so that we're not building anything that's going to get destroyed in flooding, but can be an amenity to the community as well.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that because we don't have big developments. It's not
No.
like we'll have a target and we
Yes.
don't have large tracts of land. So
Yes.
acquiring additional
Acreage
greenway space
is
yeah,
near
it's kind of
impossible.
hard. And where did you say that was in this?
So in goal 1, I think the expand green space access and the community partnerships, I think some of the action items underneath those in this one should tackle some of that.
Okay.
I can go back to confirm. Mm-hmm.
If someone's asking a question, if you can please remember to turn on your mic.
Sorry about that. My point was, the only places that we really have are gonna be in park or green spaces that are around the city that we're gonna have to somehow incorporate into whatever actions the community feels is very important. Which would be under goal 1.
Under goal 1, yeah. All right, you want to go on to the next one?
Mhm.
So the next goal or next pillar is looking at operational excellence. So this is really looking at how goal 1, how we can strengthen our regional partnerships, how we can collaborate with neighboring municipalities and the county so that we can share some services, and how we might expand access to additional amenities through partnerships. The second goal is how we can continue to invest in city services so that we can maintain this high standard of services that are offered. And a lot of this has to do with continuing to attract, develop, and retain high quality staff, and looking how we can modernize our facilities to support those services. Goal 3 is looking at larger communication with residents, businesses, and institutions, making sure that we're hosting educational workshops about key topics in the community, and having a consistent place for input from residents and local businesses. And the last is looking at how we can streamline some of the review and entitlement processes so that we can encourage public and private reinvestment in the community. Anybody have any thoughts or comments on those? I know this pillar kind of includes a lot of components.
I hinted at it last time, but I do think as far as the previous item, thank you. The walkability that Great Rivers Greenways, did I say that right? That looking for opportunities to partner with them
Greenways, yeah.
would help with the walkability.
Especially with that new park that's coming in like Maplewood, Webster Groves, right by the Club Fitness, Deer Creek. There's a new park that's coming. So that would be, that's right on the path to the, I think, the Greenway path or something. Yeah. Yeah, the old McDonald's site. I mean, yeah. So I think a vision for what that space should
look
be
like
would be huge. Like talking to people, yeah.
Right. Can go on to the next one. So this one has a lot of strategies, so we won't touch on them all, but I think this is going to address a lot of the walkability things that came up for you guys. Pillar 6 is looking at how we can make complete streets for all. This first goal is just looking at how we can reduce dangerous driving on our streets. This includes adopting a complete streets policy, how we can implement some traffic calming measures, and how we can work to collaborate with other jurisdictions for the roads that we don't have jurisdiction over. Goal 2 is really looking at how we can improve the bicycle network. And goal 3 is looking at how we can improve our pedestrian network, both from a safety perspective and making a more complete system. And a lot of those, we will have a map that goes with this, kind of showing some ideas of where these systems can continue. And a lot of that's going to have to come from coordination with our neighboring communities so we can emphasize the connections across, and looking at all different types of improvements that we can do, from crosswalks and crossings to creating pedestrian zones within our streets. Any questions? Anything missing?
I might include the state of Missouri because I saw, Watson Road was an area of emphasis, so you might want to include state of Missouri.
Okay.
Was there any thought given? I mean, I understand complete streets now is federal guide. In the last 20 years, that's become something that's where funding's available.
Yes.
But I would still consider complete streets incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
And especially look at Charles Moran, I believe, in his approach to strong towns and the importance of difference between streets and roads.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to think about that, because when you say improve safety at Laclede Station and Big Bend, who's? The people along the road or the people driving? Because those are two different things, right?
Yeah.
And if we start looking at level of service the way transportation professionals do, right, level of service A is the anti-place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you trying to improve the driver's safety or the people's safety? So I guess I'm asking, or obviously I'm sharing my views, but
Yes.
asking
Yeah.
was there more of this thoughts given to a strong towns approach with the thoughts of what's a street and what's a road?
Mm-hmm. So we had a transportation sub, so I can't go into specifics on exactly what approach he was taking, but my assumption here for those two roads specifically is that it's under reducing dangerous driving. So we're trying to make it a safer place to drive, which in turn is going to also make it safer and more comfortable for pedestrians. I think also those two roads were tackled in some of the action items as well as the mapping for bikes and pedestrians. So I think there's also improvements suggested for both so that it can address all modes of transportation. But I definitely agree that we should be clear in how we're addressing who we're creating this safety for and kind of how we're addressing where different modes of transportation should be.
I would think especially on Big Bend through Old Orchard,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's really a street there, not a road.
Mm-hmm.
But
It acts.
MoDOT probably wants that to be a road.
Yes.
But we want to be a street.
Yes.
So I think it's important. I would say it's important if you have a map to
Mhm.
give some thought of what's a street and what's road, because complete streets, you know, it's getting there, but it's not quite
Yeah.
strong towns approach.
Yes. I think the other point you had mentioned funding and just how you work with those jurisdictions. I think it's important, and what's being addressed in here is to bring to light how the community wants those streets. So back to what you were saying of how we want that Old Orchard area to be more of a street and less of a road, having that in this plan and integrated in there should hopefully encourage and move that towards being seen when improvements are done to Big Bend Boulevard. So recognizing that Webster wants it to be a street for people and something that creates a more vibrant space for that district. Any others, or should we go on to the last pillar? All right, so the last one is the essential systems. So this is really looking at the infrastructure and utilities. This one also, we recognize that those are, you know, under different ownership. So those are private entities that control a lot of those, but they impact our local residents. So we have to consider how they're maintained and enhanced and kind of be the spokesperson to ensure those improvements are getting completed. So the first goal is really looking at those utilities and infrastructure and ensuring that they're adaptable and sustainable. Number two is really looking at how we can improve stormwater management so we can address flooding, which we've recognized is something that has come up, and continue to make the city a resilient place. And the last one is looking at how we can promote energy conservation and sustainability. Any questions about these ones?
Do note on the slide, your goal 1, I believe strategy 2 and 3 are the same. Repeated. With regard to the floodplain development, so there was the issue a little while back with the people that were going to do buyouts, but then the council voted against the buyouts or the match.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe they ended up with the buyouts. But I think when we talk about floodplain management, the city needs to look at buyouts in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way. And also reduce the risk caused by floodplain development. There needs to look kind of the opposite. We need to undevelop some of the floodplain, de-develop, whatever the word is. Some of that needs to get out of floodplain. We need to think about the stream setbacks. So I would submit, it's a half measure when you talk floodplain development, that a lot of this floodplain's already developed. And that's why this was in the Webster Kirkwood Times and people got misled in their buyouts or whatever actually happened. Not say that's what happened,
Mm-hmm.
but that's out there. So buyouts, setbacks, and you know, increasing green space along that corridor need to be part of addressing floodplains.
Just give
Absolutely.
a quick plug. Next, not tomorrow's city council, but 2 weeks from that, on February 18th, there's going to be an update on the stormwater plan during the city council work session, which is of course public meeting if you want to, because we did commission a stormwater master plan. We've had one update and this is like the follow-up update. So there might be some good information that you might be interested in. I know I'm interested in it at that meeting in a couple weeks.
That'll be a great resource for us too. So thank you. Any other comments, or should we move on to the opportunity sites?
Move on.
Okay. So let's dive into
Yeah, this is exciting.
to the opportunity sites. So you saw these in the presentation that we were giving. When we came to the community workshop, we had a board that had these different areas: district opportunity sites and corridor opportunity sites. These are places where there might be strategic value in the community. We could diversify land use mix, and we can address some of the housing and economic development needs within the community. And we kind of asked the community for these two specific sites: Pacific Avenue District site, so that's the one up in Old Webster, and then the Watson Road Corridor site, and this one's on the south, the two at the bottom. And we asked the community kind of what types of uses they wanted to see. This was an open-ended question, but then we had a visual preference as well, and most people wanted to see mixed use in this area. So residential on the ground floor retail on the ground floor with residential above. So for this comprehensive plan, we're developing some ideas for these sites. These are by no means actual development proposals. They're not a one-size-fits-all for these sites, but they are a tool that you guys can use to establish a set of development guidelines for these areas. So if a proposal ever comes to you for these different places or somewhere along those corridors or districts that is a similar context, you kind of have a framework to work from of what's important to us as we look at development. So starting with the first site, you want to go to the next? This is the Pacific Avenue and Gore site. And we are looking at how we might diversify some of the land uses here. This site was chosen because, as you guys all know, there has been previous development interest in this site before. And when we did our engagement, we heard a lot of ideas and conflicting interest in what this site should become, but we heard pretty unanimously that the community wants to be a part of creating the vision for this space, and that they want to see some type of change here that is led by the city. So if you go to the next site, or the next slide, this is the proposal that we're showing here. You can see there are 3 new buildings along this site. We're preserving the one at the corner of Pacific Avenue and Gore. And these buildings are all mixed-use developments. Fronting Pacific Avenue and Gore Avenue is retail with residential above. We're trying to introduce new streetscape along both of those. So how we might improve walkability and really pulling the parking into the center of the site. If you go to the next slide, we did a min to max approach to this. So we really wanted to show you guys kind of what scale and density, the impact it would have. So we have a min, mid, and max scenario of these. The first one is what can be done within existing zoning. So this is maintaining first 4 stories. It's introducing almost 150 dwelling units and 20,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor. So this is what today you could get a proposal for this site. But we also wanted to kind of push the limits on that since there was previous development interest here, just so you guys could get an understanding of what that might look and feel like if there was increased height. So if you go to the next one, the approach we took here was just adding an additional story. So this increases residential development or the number of dwelling units. We're maintaining the same retail. One thing you'll note, which would be a suggestion, is to step back that top story so that when you're a pedestrian walking on the street, you wouldn't feel the intensity of that extra story. And another thing to note is as we increase from mid to max, we are not increasing parking. So another thing that would have to happen with this, and when it went through, the proposal is that you would have to adjust some of the parking requirements for this. So we wanted to acknowledge that we're not updating the parking, and that's one of the things that you might have to consider as you adapt additional height and density to a space. And then I'll just get through the last one. The last one, again, we just put an additional story on top of this as well. Increase in dwelling units, showing just how that might impact the massing here. This site is pretty unique because it does have topography. So the site that sits at the bottom would read pretty, read only probably as 4 stories, wouldn't be seen from Pacific Avenue. So there is the opportunity to play with the height on this site. But again, parking's not increasing, so there would be some constraints and having to go down to less than 1.5 per residential unit. I'll pause. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Maybe you can turn your mic on.
Yeah, I was leaning back. I'm sorry. I was saying we just went through this a year and a half ago on about the same
Mhm.
project. And this board approved it, but it did
Mhm.
not go beyond that. So,
Yes.
and it is a great area to be developed. It's just that in order to do it, you got to have the density, and the people around don't want the density.
Mhm.
So it makes it very difficult. It's a great idea.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it works in the, 4-story category.
Yes.
Anything over 4 stories,
Yeah.
we don't have anything in the
About that.
city over 4
Yeah.
stories.
And that's definitely something we wanted. That's the type of feedback we want from you guys, because not necessarily does all of the min to max need to be incorporated to the comprehensive plan. We can scale some of this back. It's really just supposed to be a tool for you guys to encourage development in the downtown and set some standards for what it might look like and feel like. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think the mixed use development is definitely called
Mhm.
for.
yes.
It's just that balance of height
Mhm.
and parking and, because, yeah, and in order for that downtown to survive, you need people,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And so, what's that tipping point? And
What's the threshold that it can pass? Yeah.
Traffic was the biggest.
The traffic was, and I remember hearing that as well. And I think that's one of the things that can be looked at here too, is the traffic patterns that would come from that. And if you were to go through an actual development proposal with that, you would want a traffic study.
and maintaining of open space, that was the other
Mhm.
thing. And having to deal with the creek and, the stormwater, all that. And,
Yes.
yeah, but, yeah, I mean, I think that's the only thing you can't do there.
Yes. Yeah. And that was one of the things we tried to show. If you go back to the plan, we tried to show how we can maintain that floodplain as just an open space and an improved kind of walkway for larger community, not just the residents and retail users in the space.
Fixing of buildings and how you work the parking in
Mhm.
that's critical.
Absolutely.
So I just have a question about sort of the final presentation. Because how do we differentiate to the community that like what is shown here is not what will be done? Like, should we explore different typologies of form to show different densities
Mhm.
so that it otherwise you just think you're going to get this, right?
Mhm.
So
And are these going to be arranged in like planned units so that you'd be able to do that? Or are you just going to put this is the district requirements, you can do all of these things in this, or is it going to be flexible like a planned development?
It'll definitely be flexible. So this is kind of a guide, but what we'll speak to when it's incorporated into the comprehensive plan is more of like a set of guidelines that say, improve streetscape access, maintain those 4 stories. We can talk a little bit about architectural character if we want to, and encouraging, the required parking to be set back from the buildings to maintain that street frontage. So it's speaking a little bit more to kind of how the development should happen and not necessarily one size fits all. This is exactly what we want for this.
Because when we get a plan,
Mhm.
and the staff reviews it,
Mhm.
they're looking at the comp plan and they're saying, okay, does this fit into the set of
Yes.
guidelines?
Yes.
And so that they have, yeah. they
Yes,
have
and
to
that's
match.
the hope and the idea behind creating a tool like this. And we can talk internally too, Kyle, to address your comment about, how we might approach it to the larger community if it is something that, we extend this development principles and guidelines to address some of those. We incorporate visual preference to show comparable communities of how this might happen, or if it's something else we play with additional layouts.
Yeah, I mean, you want a developer to come in and be flexible. You
Yes,
don't want to say
to
this
be
is what we want.
flexible.
We want 3 buildings for, you don't want to do
Yes,
that.
you don't want to be
wanna
confined.
that strict in your interpretation.
Yes,
So.
yes, but it's definitely, again, if a developer comes, it's helpful to show that you've explored this site in the comp plan too, just to kind of show that there's community interest in this space. Mm-hmm.
Maybe this comes later, but does your report and recommendations, like, does it go deep on incentives?
Incentives.
Like subsidies?
We speak to it in some of our action items, and we will in the implementation start looking at some of the funding mechanisms and incentive tools that can be used for these different areas. We haven't fully gotten into that yet, but that'll be implementation step.
That's very helpful. Great.
Yeah.
That's good presentation.
Awesome. Well, there's one more site, so I'll quickly go through.
That's
Okay.
Yeah. Comments on the other one.
Like-
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was.
Okay, that was good. Thank you.
I thought we actually split, so we didn't make a recommendation.
We did. We actually.
Because
split.
somebody had to abstain, so we split 3 and 3. So the board did not make a
Mhm.
recommendation.
No recommendation.
Yeah, because
Mm.
Christopher Michael stayed out. So to Steve's point, it's expensive to develop.
Mhm.
I took some exception with that approach. I thought the developer's reasoning was a little circular. I got to do a big development. It's going to cost a lot of money. So I need a lot of money to do a big development.
Yep.
So if you look at that, what he said, and I think what you're missing in this plan is important, is that site from the street down to the creek drops considerably. And I don't think your plan, the way you've drawn it, is probably workable just from the geometry of that site. And that's, I think, what the developer for SG Collaborative
Mhm.
would have said. And he would be the first to say, well, they sent out 3 and I'm the only one that came back. And so I think that site in particular has some grading.
Significant grade change.
And
Yeah.
And I can remember somebody saying, well, why has it got to be like that? And he stood there and he said, well, if you could read plans, you'd understand.
Mhm.
Something like that was his answer.
Yeah.
So there is a
We had to
significant
put that
grade.
in
grade that way.
to
Between that
recoup his
street.
As
costs
well
from
as
all the
backward.
sites-
I
all the
bet
site
70
development
feet or
that he had to do.
Yes, it's significant.
Fall.
Yeah.
And that was driving, that was his, I got to move all this earth to do this development, so it's going to be expensive. So
Mhm.
that's why I need 7 stories in my
Two.
apartments or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I got to move 10 million yards of dirt,
Mhm.
build anything. Well, don't
Right.
build
Yeah.
so much, you want to move so much dirt. But, and it doesn't fall straight, it goes, then it falls.
Mhm.
So you only get to use so much of it before the slope.
Or you have to change the grade. Yeah.
So your footprint's probably too big unless you want to start doing a whole lot of earthwork.
Mhm. We can definitely look back at it again. We brought the topography in when we were exploring this, but it is site level and we want to make sure that it's going to be accurate within the topography for sure.
And back to trying to preserve that, that's a real nice, for an urban stream, that's a real nice corridor. That's
Mhm.
there. So you're showing engineering all that. We really want to protect floodplain and protect floodplain. It might be good to leave that alone and keep development limited to the top of the
To the
slope,
top.
which is probably about that tree line
Mhm.
here. on your
Gotcha.
aerial. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you. Giving away my secrets. So this next site we explored is along Watson Road at the corner of Elm Avenue and Watson. So it's where the Walgreens is located, the Big Lots, which just went out of, which is now sitting vacant. And we looked at a couple of different sites along this corridor because there are a couple potential ones, but we really wanted to focus in on this one because of that old Watson Road. There is a nice separation from existing residential. So if we're testing and exploring density and height, it's nice to have a little setback from existing communities. So if you go to the next one, this is very similar in use to the last concept you saw. Again, there was a lot of high interest in this this being the type of use that is along here, but we're looking at how we might create more of a vibrant streetscape along this area and really bring those buildings to front Watson Road. We would have retail on the ground floor and residential above, creating this courtyard space in the back for the new residents. And again, maintaining that parking internally as well as along the back side of Old Watson Road. You can see that this also introduces a new streetscape along Old Watson Road where there's not currently a sidewalk on that site. And this is a pretty unique parcel. So that last end down there is introducing a new green space, open space to the public. Kind of bringing back a callback to our strategy to expand the open space in the community, and really anchoring that by one commercial use with some outdoor dining, and kind of really activating that open space. So we took a similar approach with this one with a mid, and max, where the minimum is what can be built with an existing zoning. And then we introduced that 5th story and that 6th story. So here you can really look at how we're creating this new anchor at that entrance of Elm and Watson into the community, trying to introduce a public plaza, some gateway signage to welcome people into Webster Groves. And you have those streets kind of really creating a strong building frontage along both Watson and Elm Street, and showing how we might create a more vibrant and walkable streetscape along both corridors as well. So if you were at mid at 5, and then max is going all the way up to 6 stories. This concept is introducing a similar capacity of new residential dwelling units for each as well. But a reminder that the parking spaces would kind of stay stagnant in all of the concepts. So it would be less per unit as you go up in the additional stories. Any questions or comments about this concept?
Well, has there been any talk about Route 66? Because this is all, like, Watson Road is on Route 66. I've never understood why we don't, like, draw more attention to that, because that's so cool and people
The
like come
historic
all
Route
around the
66,
country.
yeah.
But we do nothing for
Mhm.
that. And I've never understood that.
Yeah.
Like the draw, there's so much draw, but like no one knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be done through signage.
Exactly.
Yeah, something simple like that.
Some cool
could-
store or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the, I like this.
Mhm.
I like this because it's a departure from traditional suburban, which is
Mhm.
what you saw up and down, the parking lot in front and then everything in back.
Yep.
And actually, I was disappointed when Crestwood came in and redeveloped theirs and
Mhm.
did the same thing. You're looking at a parking lot and they had such an opportunity
Yeah.
to do something like that. And I think creating a streetscape would not only look good for, that corridor, but it would distinguish this year in Webster Groves.
Yes. Yes.
And I like maybe the fact that it's urban looking,
Mhm.
which we don't have a whole lot in Webster, but this is a really unique
Mhm.
area in Webster. A lot of people don't even know it's in Webster.
Mhm.
So I think this is what I envisioned for the
Yeah.
area, so.
Thank you.
And I
that's
think you could go up to 5 stories.
on this area with a little separation from the residential, and it being along a pretty intense corridor already, it probably could lend itself to higher stories. The other thing we talked about, I think it was during our steering committee meeting with this concept, is it's really creating kind of a walkable environment in that retail space. You can imagine if this was fully built out with more of like a main street retail businesses, you're providing that opportunity for some of South Webster who doesn't have as much access to the districts that are up above the highway interstate.
I mean, I don't know how much pedestrian traffic you get along Highway 66. but
Yeah.
If you create people.
Yeah, if you create the
if
space,
that-
they're
they-
gonna,
If they have.
they're gonna have a place to go.
There's services and things that.
Yeah, they want to come
use.
to.
Yeah, I mean, I
Mhm.
think it's.
Mhm.
It would also potentially influence the development that happens across the street, creating a place.
Mhm.
Because there's apartments behind the, behind there, but
Mhm.
in terms of the streetscape, yes.
Yeah. And then this is another good example. I spoke about these development guidelines that will come from this. And we've marked other opportunity sites along this corridor, and you can see a lot of this being replicated along those sites as well. So hopefully this really becomes a tool for you guys to kind of compare it to additional
Yeah,
development.
It's a good start.
Mhm.
To Michael's point, streets versus roads, a lot of the success of this is going to depend on getting more influence on Watson Road, because I mean, it's a
Mhm.
fast corridor to put a park on a
Mhm.
wedge and get pedestrians to feel comfortable along there.
Mhm.
It's not heavily trafficked though.
Yeah.
For being, yeah.
And I could take a road diet, right? I mean,
Eh,
that's,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would be nice to, constrain the lanes.
Mhm.
Of course, you're putting more people on it because you've got
Yeah.
5-story
Right.
buildings.
Yeah. Now additional residents.
Which comes
Yes.
first? Which comes first?
Yes.
Send them all west.
Yeah, but it puts you in a different place as you're driving down
Absolutely.
66 and you see that you're in a
Mhm.
different place, just like when you cross over. Let's see, I'm trying to think if I'm driving down Watson just past, like Mackenzie or someplace like that, when it changes as you're going toward
Changes
Jameson,
character. Mhm.
it- you're in a different place.
Yeah. Yeah.
My only other thought is, especially when it comes to like presenting it, this is the max here is a more what I would call a dense, intensive use, but it says it's 38 dwelling units per acre. And I
Mhm.
think, right, because we got the park in, we got the green space.
Yep.
When it's actually, I don't know,
It
how do you present it to someone to say, hey, by the way, this is a more dense, intense use
Mhm.
than the max that's been
Mhm.
proposed at
The other site.
the old Douglas
Yeah.
Hills site. Yeah.
And some of that can come from,
Yeah,
take
numbers.
away the park from the total acreage.
I like the density a lot.
Awesome. Well, just one quick wrap up slide for you guys. Just kind of next steps. We will be with City Council tomorrow, so we're going to give them a process update as well. It'll be almost the same presentation, but a little bit shorter on time. And then this was a lot to digest, and I know you guys had a full document as well. So if you guys have additional comments, thoughts, any updates to the memo that we've shared, please do send them along to Renee, and they'll make sure they get to us.
I do have just a comment.
Yeah.
I guess. So there are a couple of other sites
Mhm.
that we have in the city, the Kirkham corridor for one. We have plans on that. We've done area studies on that. Was there a reason why you took that? Was just why you sort of took that off the table and concentrated on these two? These were the ones you just got the most comments about?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what started our decision on focusing on those two, where these Watson Road and that Pacific Avenue sites really came up as key topics in our conversations with the larger community. So we chose to kind of focus the opportunity sites on those areas.
So in the comprehensive plan that you're developing,
Mhm.
that area in particular, are you going to go back to some of the recommendations in those area studies that were made 20 years ago?
I think we can definitely address
Yeah.
some of those sites through the land use strategy. And we can also take a look at those recommendations and see how they might integrate into this if appropriate.
Yeah, because those were also
Yeah.
sites that were, mixed use. Those, those were the kind of the things that, affordable housing or attainable housing.
Yeah, and those
so
were the areas
mixed uses. So,
recognized.
and that being kind of in the center of this, it's kind of a gateway
Mhm.
also. I would hate to lose sight of that Kirkham corridor.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, if you guys have any other final comments, please share those. We've said by February 10th, but if you have any after that as well, we're still, in draft form. And then the next step really for us is to take these ideas and our conversation here and pull together the first draft of the comprehensive plan for review. So that's what we'll be working on through March.
Good job.
Awesome.
Anybody?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for your
Very
time.
much. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
good. You've done a lot of work. And
It's been a fun one.
it's been a year.
Just about.
Just about a year.
Yeah, just about a year.
So, but
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next meeting.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry. I have something to add to the old business, just kind of an update in terms of, before you move on to.
Okay, oh.
It's
other
not on
business?
there.
Other
Other
business?
business.
Other business, sorry,
Okay.
thank you, other business. I don't know.
We might have something to say, but I'm sure.
I'm sorry?
It depends on, well,
it's- we're-
whatever
we're-
you want
yeah.
to say. Do you want it on the
Is it-
record or
is
off
it-
the record?
yeah.
What is, we don't know. what
Was
you're-
it just
Yeah.
a new, is it new business or? is it-
No, it's an update. At the last meeting, we had the plats
Yes,
that we had approved, and so the city is actually going to make a type up a letter and make a recommendation that we amend that vote, and we're going to re-see those plats coming up. So I just want to kind of put it out on your radar that it's going to be coming back
in March. It'll be
in March. Yeah, in the meeting in March.
Okay, thank you.
So it'll be a March meeting.
Okay.
Okay, on that note, the next regular meeting will be March 3rd, 2025.
Okay.
Then I will call for adjournment. of
Motion
the
for adjournment.
Executive session.
Motion?
Motion to end.
Motion adjourned.